Hi everyone, and welcome back to Safe Space, the Safe in Our World podcast. For those who don't know, the main goal of Safe in Our World is to create and foster worldwide mental health awareness within the video games industry. My name is Rosie, and today I am joined by Doug Cockle, aka the voice of Geralt of Rivia, who is also a patron for Safe in Our World, and you've basically supported us since the beginning, I think.
From the beginning,
yeah, because you've even voiced one of our videos, which is amazing. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
No problem. Pleased to be here.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. And I guess I just wanted to, if anyone doesn't know who you are, because you're not just The Witcher, although that is the main thing that you're known for. Can you just tell everyone a little bit about who you are? Throw you off the deep end.
Yeah, really. Who am I? Who is Doug Cockle?
An existential question to start.
Yes, existential is right. Okay, well, just some very basic things. I've been a professional actor for over 25 years. I work in stage, screen, radio, pretty much you name it now. I've even done performance capture recently for the first time. So
yes,
that
I saw
was
that
a
on your
good
Twitter
experience.
in the full get-up. It looked amazing.
Yeah, it was really good fun. And it was on my bucket list of things to do, but it's not something that, unless you sign up for a class or something, which I didn't feel like I really needed to do, you have to be cast in something that requires that of you, and I just hadn't been until this point. But anyway, so yeah, that's my kind of job in a nutshell. I'm a professional actor. I've also been a professional teacher. I taught acting full-time when I was the course leader for the BA Honours Acting course at Arts University Bournemouth for nearly 13 years. And I mean, we can talk about that another time if you want. I left that job in 2017 to focus on my professional acting career again. So that's my career in a nutshell. I'm also a husband and a father to two boys, aged 20 and 18. And a little boy named Digby, who's a border terrier, and he's 10.
Oh, Digby. What an angel.
So he's floating around here somewhere, so we may
can we see him if he comes?
Well, he's not in the room at the moment, but he was just a minute ago.
Okay.
So if you really want me to, I can show you Digby when he comes in. But you might hear him at some point. So.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I was just saying we've got a hound, and she just decides to. She's protecting us from all of the dangerous people, like the post people, and anyone who walks past our house. And so it's great. It's really
Every
great when
noise,
you're trying to record. Yeah. So she's a special girl. Bless her.
I think we just have to agree then that this podcast may well include dogs.
Yes. Exactly. I think that's just a disclaimer that we should say at the start. Then I don't have to edit it out.
I think it may just be worth adding to the Who is Doug Cockle thing. My relationship with Safe in Our World came about largely because a lot of the work that I've done is in video game voiceovers. Mm-hmm. And quite a lot of that, well, not quite a lot, but I've worked on a number of projects with several of the people who started Safe in Our World. So when they were looking for people to kind of help, support and grow the organization, one of them approached me just with the idea. I mean, the organization hadn't even fully been created yet. So it was just, Doug, we're doing this and we think it's a really great thing and we think you might think the same thing. Are you interested in maybe being a patron? And I said, yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, I knew that you'd been interested and involved since the beginning, but because I didn't join until 2020, I've kind of just been thrown into it, and it's amazing that you've been involved since before we've even started. Because I know that you've also done work in, like you say, other video games as well. And I can't remember. Is it Victor Vran that you also do?
Mm-hmm.
Which is awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, I did variety. That at the. Yeah, the not the developer, but the publisher was Wired Productions, and one of the guys from Wired Productions, or maybe a couple of the guys from Wired P, were two of the four founders. I think there were four. you might know better than I do, Rosie. But anyways, yeah, there was a
don't quiz
heavy.
me.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not. I promise. Yeah, no, it was because I'd worked with them on several projects by that point. So, and I think I was just starting another one. So yeah, it was that, I was a voice actor in their recent experience.
Nice. And so have you always wanted to be an actor? I mean, you've said you've been an actor for 20 odd years now. Is it just something that you always knew you wanted to do, or was there something else?
Well, my mom, bless her, she's not with us anymore, but she always said, he's always been a performer. Just like that. She's always been a performer. Yeah, when I was a kid, I was very much an exhibitionist, an extrovert, always at the front of whatever was going on. I put together a magic show when I was like 9 years old. That was absolutely dreadful, but my mom put together a little top hat for me, made a top hat and a cape with red lining on the inside and all that stuff. So I had this little magic show I'd trot out at friends' birthday parties and stuff. It was terrible. I had a disappearing act. I said, and now for my grand conclusion, I'm going to disappear. Everybody close your eyes. And I would run to the back of the room.
I mean,
it was absolutely absurd, but
you've got to do what you've got to do. If that's how you disappear, who's to say otherwise?
Yeah, no, I didn't always want to be an actor. I always had performance tendencies, I suppose. No, when I did acting in high school, I took dance classes when I was a much younger person, when I was 8 or 9. For a very short while. Things like that. Yeah, high school, I did the drama club, took drama classes and stuff like that. Went to university, though, and majored in biology, and I was on a pre-medicine route. I was going to be a doctor. And I didn't have much fun with chemistry, didn't do very well, and started reevaluating my life choices. And a friend of mine said, well, Doug, where do you see yourself in 20 years? Not even 10 years. Where do you see yourself in 20 years? What do you enjoy doing that you can see yourself still enjoying 20 years from now? This is 19 or 20-year-old me being asked this. And I thought long and hard about it. And the thing that I kept coming back to was the theater. So eventually I decided to change my major to theater arts with an acting emphasis. I called up my parents and I told them what I was going to do. And my dad, bless him, he's ex-military. He was a 20-year retired Marine Corps officer. And he just said, well, be careful, son. Those people lead an alternative lifestyle.
In the Witcher voice.
So, yes, well, he didn't use the Witcher voice. That's just my lower register. But yeah, he's very supportive. He's always been super supportive, as was my mom. And it was sage advice because theater people do. They don't work normal jobs. They don't do normal hours. They work nights. They work weekends. There's a much more diverse representation of society in the theater world, in the theater arts and performing arts world. Not that diversity isn't found elsewhere, but it was one of the things. My dad was absolutely right. I suddenly found myself meeting and interacting with people from backgrounds and with identities that I had never really experienced before. So it opened my eyes to a whole world that was there, and I knew it was there, and I had run into it in little bits and pieces here and there. But compared to what I then experienced when I changed my major and started interacting with a different group of people, I suddenly went, wow, there's a lot more color in this world than I ever imagined. And I mean that like colors of the rainbow, not like skin color.
Sure.
So sorry, I don't know where that all came from. That's just kind of like...
No, I was just listening.
That was how I decided. That's how I decided to become an actor, and I just didn't really look back from there. So
And
I,
so how
I
did
went to
that
Virginia
lead
Tech.
you, how did that lead you to become Geralt?
Oh, that's a longer journey and a really simple answer as well. So I did a lot of training. I did a theater major with an acting emphasis in university, and then after 3 years of working professionally, I went back to school and did a Master of Fine Arts degree in acting. For a number of reasons, the additional training, the focus, 3 years of training. It's also a teacher qualification, certainly in the States, but also over here. So I just wanted to make sure that I could continue doing what I love doing. I love doing performance and acting in particular, and just being in the theater and in that community. So anyways, I came to England. I moved to England in 1999. And one of the first jobs that I was sent for by an agent who I met was a voiceover audition for a voiceover for a video game. And I was like, she called me up, and I'd only just met her. She didn't know what to do with me. I was an American living in England. We can talk about that another time if you like. So how I ended up doing that. I had just gotten to England. I was living with my in-laws in York, me and my wife. I talked my way into a job at the York Theatre Royal, and I met this agent through a play I was doing there. And she sent me on this audition. She said, Doug, they're auditioning for characters in a video game over in Harrogate. Would you like to go? And I was like, video game? Sure, why not? You know, I love video games. I didn't know that people were doing voices for them. So I went to this audition and had my very first acting on microphone experience and met Mark S. Dale from Outsource Media, who I still work with to this day. And he offered me the lead part in the game, which was Independence War II: Edge of Chaos. And I played Cal, the young, not so young protagonist of the game. Mm-hmm. So that was my introduction to video game voice acting. It was just an audition, and then, I kept getting asked to come in and do other things. And gradually that led to Mark asking me to come in for an audition for a new video game, fantasy role-playing game called The Witcher. And he couldn't tell me much more about it because he didn't know that much more about it. I went in and auditioned, and I was in the room for about 15 minutes, and I left, and I think it was a week or two later I got the call, hey, you got Geralt of Rivia. I was like, yay, good. And I was teaching full-time at the time, so I was doing any acting work I could get. I was doing, I'd take the day off from work, or if I had very light teaching duties, a colleague would cover me or something like that, and I'd jaunt off to London to do a day of voiceover or something. So anyways, that's how I became Geralt of Rivia. A very simple audition for just another game. They're all great games. They're all wonderful games, but they're all just another game until I get the job. And then they become more important,
Yeah.
But this was a game that nobody knew anything about. It was based on a series of books that were all in Polish, so I couldn't go and read the books. I didn't know about the Polish TV series at the time. I just, the writers and the producers described the world to me, described Geralt to me, described what a Leshen was, described the relationship of the Witchers and the sorcerers and sorceresses and all. All this stuff was just told to me by the CD Projekt Red crew. So that's how I kind of got to know the world. But then I got to spend many years in that same world, which is a real blessing to any actor. It's, I recorded Witcher 1 in 2005, and the game came out in 2007, I think. Mm-hmm. And, or maybe 2006, I don't remember. And I've been with with the brand ever since.
Is that
that's a rarity for an actor.
Do you think?
No.
I was just about to say, is that a normal thing for a voice actor, especially with so much, there's so much going on with The Witcher, there's so many different forms of media that it's taking, and so being involved for so long must be kind of emotional, I guess, in a way, because it's tied to you, to your career.
It is, and I mean, I had a career before The Witcher came along, but post Witcher 3, my career took a really interesting, sharp turn, a positive turn, but it was a definite turn, and that was partly why I left the teaching job, because I found myself with the 120% demands that the teaching job was placing on me, and the increasing demands that my professional acting career was beginning to place on me. And so it became this juggling act that I could not do both anymore, and came to a point where my wife and I had to sit down and go, right, well, what's realistic? What can we do? What can't we do? And we decided that it was a good time for me to refocus 100% of my attention, at least for that period of time, on professional acting, and with the view that I could always go back to teaching if I missed it so much that I wanted to go back, or if I needed to for financial reasons. Because, an acting career is freelance, and income is not guaranteed. There's a lot of hard work to put yourself out there and try and get the opportunities and then take them. And then as a freelancer, sometimes you don't get paid for 6 months after a job. I've got outstanding invoices from nearly a year ago, and some of them are quite large. So, yeah, it's a ridiculous thing. But this is what all freelancers do. This is what they all deal with. Acting is just one thing you can do as a freelancer. So it's not a financially safe career. It's not necessarily an emotionally or mentally safe career either, which is partly what we're going to talk about, I think, today. But I think it's... Yeah, I've got a story about Geralt of Rivia related to mental health, and maybe that'll come up later.
Please do tell it. I mean, this is the perfect time.
Yeah, well, see, I've had the great fortune of being Geralt of Rivia since 2005, and but that almost didn't happen. After Witcher 1, CD Projekt decided. They went right back to the bare bones. They started over with The Witcher. They kept the basic templates for the characters, but even those changed. But they decided to start from scratch and build something even bigger and better. And to do that, they decided to cut ties with a lot of different people. And one of the things that they decided to do was to change voiceover production company. So the company that did Witcher 1 wasn't engaged to do Witcher 2. And when CD Projekt went to the new company, which was Side, they basically said, look, just start from the beginning, recast everybody. And so that's what they did. And I got a call from a friend of mine, another actor, one day, who said, hey, Doug, I just came out of an audition for The Witcher, and they auditioned me for Geralt of Rivia. I thought that was you. And I was like, yeah, I did too. Okay, thanks for the heads up. And of course, like all artists do, I took it personally. I thought, well, what did I do? What didn't they like about my performance that made them not want me back? And so I was beating myself up a little bit. And then I thought, no, stuff this. So I texted Boris at CD Projekt. He was the guy I had worked with a bit more than anybody else, and I had his cell phone number. And I just said, hey, I hear you're looking for new Geralts. I think I said exactly that, but something like that. I hear you're auditioning for Witcher 2. I'd love to throw my hat back in the ring. I enjoyed doing Witcher 1. If you'd like me to come in for another audition, please just let me know. I'm available. Let me know what you think. And he got back to me and he said, hey, Doug, I'm really sorry we didn't tell you about this. Let me talk with the director, the voiceover director, and I'll get back to you. And I think it may have been a day or two. And then I can't remember how the information came to me now, but basically I was informed that I was going to continue to be Geralt of Rivia. And and the details would be sorted out later. So the reason I tell that story is not to disparage CD Projekt in any way. or anybody else in any way, but to say, and we're talking about mental health here to a certain extent. So I could have kept beating myself up and feeling bad about myself and blaming myself and not going after it. I could have not persisted and probably been a less happy individual now for knowing what I'd lost and seeing someone else doing it. But I didn't. I gave myself a little slap. Said, "No, Doug, you got to put your hat back in the ring. You don't know why they decided not to use you." And so, had I not done that, had I not mentally just gone, you know what, this isn't great news, but I can do something about this. I can be proactive, or I can sit on my butt and watch things happen to me. So I decided to be proactive, and it panned out. It worked. And then I had many happy years of voicing Geralt in other games. So I'm not sure exactly what the message is. I suppose part of it is resilience. It's the importance of, even when you don't feel like it, identify what can I do here that is positive, that may, even if I don't get to play Geralt again, at least I've tried. Yeah. That was my mindset going in. At least then I've tried. If I go in with a positive attitude and a professional attitude and I just offer myself up again, I could get a no and that could hurt. I could get a yes. And that is what happened. So exactly. I like to tell that story.
It's like go ahead. Not allocating your worth to other people and having it in their hands, isn't it? Because it can be a very easy thing to do, especially, if you're very vulnerable to having other people's image of you in your head holding weight. And I do it myself all the time, and I want to get out of it. It's a habit that I am very willing to break. But it's about a bit of
we all do it.
Yeah, of course, everyone does.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say it's that little self-doubt dude sitting on your shoulder, the one that whispers in your ear and goes, "Oh, you're not good enough," or "I don't know if you can really do that." It's that little voice that we all have. It's there. Everybody has it. So it's just finding ways to set up another little dude on your other shoulder that's going, "But maybe you can. And maybe you're scared of it because it's a challenge, but you can do it. But it's going to take a lot of hard work." And it's balancing those two voices out that is the constant challenge, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's like one of my favorite quotes ever that I still think about all the time is the quote is, "If you can't beat fear, just do it scared." And like that resonates so much with me because I am scared most of the time, but I see it as a good thing because it's like I'm pushing my boundaries, I'm growing as a person. You see yourself doing things that you probably wouldn't have been able to do 3-4 years ago or whatever the timescale might be. And that's good. Yeah. It's a positive thing. And if Geralt
I love that.
If you can't do it, then come on.
Yeah, well, I love that. What was that quote again? If you can't
beat fear, just do it scared.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. I mean, I think perhaps it's important to acknowledge that there is genuine fear that is valuable and keeps you alive. There is that fear that says, "Don't do that. You might hurt yourself." Yes. That's a genuine one, and then you assess the risks and you take the risk or you don't. But a lot of the time, the fear we have is completely, it's manufactured by ourselves. It's not based on actual risks. It's based on a fiction that we write for ourselves, and then we believe in that fiction, and that stops us doing things that we really want to do. My wife always says, if I get a job offer, and this has happened multiple times, if I get a job offer and I get off the phone and I tell her about it, and she says, "Well, what do you think?" And I go, "It really scares me, actually. I've never done anything like that before. It's a scary prospect." And she goes, "Well, that means you should do it." Yeah. Because it would be easy for me to say, "You know what? I don't know if I can do that, so I'm not going to," and then regret it maybe later. It's harder to say, "You know what? That scares me, but I'm going to take that as a sign that it's perhaps something I should do then."
Yeah. Absolutely. It's scary for a reason, but it's usually worth the payoff. And I feel like it's the more nervous you get about something, the better you feel once you've accomplished it. Because then you're like, oh my God, I did that. Like, I had a panel at TwitchCon this year, and I was terrified because I don't usually do panels in front of people, never mind in front of an actual real life crowd, I guess. Or like, there was seats and it was stressful, and I genuinely thought about 5 minutes before, maybe I can't do it and maybe I should just try and find someone else to do it for me, because I'm gonna have a panic attack, I might cry, I don't know what's gonna happen. And as soon as I sat there, I was literally fine, everything went well, nothing went terribly. And it's so hard to break that mindset, but literally just forcing yourself to do it sometimes is the best way. And getting other people to talk you into doing it as well. Like, if you can't trust yourself, trust someone else who, you know, has always been there for you as well, because that can be really helpful. And like you say, you've got your wife, like your friends, your loved ones, anyone can kind of give you that push to tell you that you are good enough to do it and you're worth trying for it, even if it's not meant to be. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that most of the things that we're afraid of are not silly, but they're in the big scheme of things, they're not important. They're things like not being afraid to look silly or stupid or whatever word you choose to use. It's fears that are perhaps based in a possibility, but ultimately in the long run, probably not really worth being afraid of.
Mm-hmm. Everyone's always more focused on themselves anyway. Like, and I say that from like a very anxious perspective, that whenever I leave the house, I'm always like, oh my God, people are wondering what I'm doing, what I'm wearing, why am I walking that way? And then everyone else is just in their own head for the most part. And so it's
doing exactly the same thing.
Yes, exactly. Everyone's nervous about each other and no one's really actually thinking about someone else for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cruel thing what your brain can tell you, that will sometimes inhibit you from doing things that, you know, you can be amazing at. So just trying to ignore it sometimes, or trying to train it to say nice things instead is a good thing. It's a step in the right direction, I think.
Yeah.
So how have you found the transition between physical acting and voice acting? And also now we can talk about the motion capture that you did as well. Like, do you have to get in a different mindset to do each one? Do you feel, because like I've heard some voice actors say that they have to really like overemphasize compared to physical acting because you can't see them actually talking, and so yeah, I just wondered what your kind of process is for getting into that mindset.
Well, I think that the basics of acting are true no matter what you're doing. You know, the actual act of acting is the same. What changes are the technical realities. You know, as an actor, this is my perspective, by the way. Other people may have a different perspective on this, but you know, this is my personal experience and perspective on this thing that I do. First of all, I go into it as a job. It's not and an art. It's not something I throw my entire life at. That's not healthy. So I go and I do the work and I walk away. And I do my very best. You know, I do the preparation I need to do. I do whatever research I need to do beforehand. I try to prepare as well as I can. But then once the job's done, I walk away. Or if the day's done, you know, if it's multiple days of filming or recording or whatever it is, I know I've got more tomorrow. So I'm turned off. Mm-hmm. My acting is turned off, and now I'm just Doug. Because you got to have that time to recharge and to, you know, to have a life. But the actual act of acting is a real person trying to access within themselves the truth of a fictional being. It could be human, could be creature, could be animal. You know, people have voiced rocks in animations and things like that, you know. So the actual act of acting is the same. What changes is how the actor has to deal with the technical limitations, which are also opportunities. So you mentioned somebody you spoke with who said they have to overemphasize when they're voice acting. I wouldn't describe my own approach as that. If it's almost like it needs to be underemphasized for me, but that's not just Geralt. That's other things as well. I think for me, what it is, it's one of the technical things that actors do when they work on a script is they identify the key words. What are the words in this sentence that this character says that carry the meaning? And depending on the character, depending on the moment in time for that character, depending on the words themselves, and depending on how the actor feels about this moment with this character, those key words could change. But by and large, they'll be, at 80% of the key words will be the same. So I find that when I'm doing voice acting, I'm picking out the key words a little bit more carefully. Because as the other person you spoke with said, all you have is your voice to communicate who this character is and what they want. Mm-hmm. That's not fundamentally true, actually, because you've got animators on your side and artists who are going to provide an image that this character has that helps to tell that story. Yeah. But there is certainly there's a difference for an actor when they do just voice. And I think that is one of the technical things that we all do is we pick out those key words so that we can, with the voice, tell the story. But again, the fundamental act of acting is the same. You're trying to find the truth of this character in this moment of time in this world and accessing that through yourself, which sounds all kind of wishy-washy and stuff like that. But it is a really good way to describe the actual act of doing this thing called acting. Mm-hmm. One of the other differences is when you're doing voice acting, almost always you're alone in a booth by yourself wearing your own clothing. Sometimes I take my shoes off in the booth just to feel the floor beneath me. So you don't have what you have in television and film and theater, and to a certain extent, performance capture. You don't have other actors to respond to and work with and off of. You don't have a costume that helps inform how you move, how you sit, how you walk, how you feel. You don't have the memorized dialogue, which can help things feel a bit more spontaneous, even though it's rehearsed. It's a funny conundrum, dichotomy. I'm not sure which it is, probably both. In the theater and to a certain extent film and television, though the rehearsal time is drastically cut down, you rehearse and rehearse and rehearse so that you can look as spontaneous as possible. It's the weirdest thing. But, you don't have all these other things when you're voice acting that you have when you're doing these other things. But if you're doing film, then you've got a camera lens in your face that you have to interact with. That's your audience. If you're on television, sometimes it's lens here, sometimes it's a lens further out. You've got lights in your eyes. You've got a crew of people standing around you doing all their jobs, wishing you to get it right because we're on a schedule and we need to move on. In the theater, you've got a live audience sitting right there. Things happen. You make a mistake, you have to deal with it in real time, in character if possible. People in the audience, their phones go off, they're eating crisps and really loudly with packets that, shakes your concentration. So there's other things that you have to deal with. But fundamentally, acting is the same across all of them.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating because I never really thought about all of the extra things that you have to think about. And I would struggle so much to concentrate on something in theatre because I get distracted by anything. And so if someone's phone started ringing, if someone was eating too loudly or something, I think I would lose focus so quickly. So honestly, it's a huge testament to the work that you and actors do in general, because it's a lot and I could never. So, I mean, you said as well, which I think is important to highlight, that you have to, once you've done the work, that's it, and then you have to change back into Doug and you time for yourself. It's incredibly important, especially in the games industry, because it's such a passion-filled industry, and everyone, I think, thinks they need to throw their work and their heart and their soul into it, when it is just like any other job. But because it's about such things that people have grown up with, or maybe have a certain, emotional tie with, they feel as though they need to do more than that. And so what would be your advice to someone maybe struggling to switch off, or what you do to kind of separate work from life when you've had one of those days that's just like really intense?
Wow. Well, I in some ways, I'm hesitant to offer advice because everybody's so different.
Yeah.
I think acknowledging that you may need to turn off is a really important step. I mean, I think we all recognize when we're overstimulated, or when we are overwhelmed, or when we are feeling like it's all just too much, or we feel that anxiety rising up. We feel it happening. We're not stupid. We feel it happening. So it's about finding the things that, and we talk about triggers a lot, and I don't like the word really, because I think it's to a certain extent, it's a get out of jail free card. I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm saying that I think sometimes we rely on that word too heavily to describe what's happening to us, or at least that's how I feel about myself. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are things that upset me. My wife says that I'm terrible with spilled milk. I can't handle spilled milk. But in a crisis, I'm amazing. Now, I don't know why that is. And I don't know why spilled milk is so upsetting to me. And I don't mean literally spilled milk. I mean little things in life that go wrong. Yeah. Why do I behave that way? And I still do. It still happens. And she calls me on it. But what I've been trying to do the last few years is to call myself on it. I mean, I actively tell myself off in as positive a way as I can. If I feel those feelings starting to rise up, where I'm just going, the world sucks, life sucks because somebody didn't fold the laundry, which is a ridiculous thing for it to leap. That's just an example. I don't go around looking at the laundry and having a meltdown, but it's that as an example. Sometimes those little things can trigger a response that is far, far, far beyond what is required. So for myself, I try to first of all acknowledge that that's happening. I go, that's happened. That has just happened. I just got pissed off about nothing. And then I talk to myself. I say, Doug, that's not a big deal. It'll all get sorted out. Get on with what you were getting on with. And forget about that. I try to coach myself down. Mm-hmm. But I think the only way you can do that is if you actually do acknowledge that something is happening. And if we're going to talk about triggers, then let's talk about the triggers that help you get back to where you want to be as well. What in your life triggers the positive thoughts, the better response? I think that's partly why I don't like the word triggers, because we use it to describe anything that sets us off, but it could also set us on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important as well to know what makes you happy and to know what helps you get back into a good headspace. And like you say, it's often hard to recognize it when you're in your own bubble. But often, as soon as and this is from my personal experience, if I know that I'm really overreacting to something that does not warrant that response, because I think everything's getting on top of me, explaining to someone why I'm so upset then makes me realize that it's actually not the thing that's upsetting me the most. It's all these other things as well. So even trying to just put it into words, like journaling and that sort of thing, is helpful for me. Because then you kind of rationalize with yourself what you actually do feel and why you're upset, because everyone has those days when loads of little things add up and then you drop a pen and then that's it. that's the end of the day. And that's okay, but it's just knowing that it's not the pen drop that made,
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah. I mean, everybody will have their own things that helps them cope. And I'm certainly no expert on this. It's just, my own experience and things. I think there's a funny thing as well. You said, people, what makes you happy or something like that. And I think happiness is one of those giddy things. And I think there must be a better word for what we're actually after.
Yes.
Because happy's a great goal, but perfection is a great goal as well. And perfection isn't always possible.
No.
And neither is happiness. Or healthy, yes. And going too far in search of happiness isn't healthy probably either. So I don't know what the word is. The word that came to mind was comfortable.
Yeah.
Because part of what happens, I think, I know for myself, when I start going to a dark place, it's because I'm uncomfortable about something. So it's less about what will make me happy and more about what will make me more comfortable.
Yeah.
With this situation, or with a situation in the future. If I'm anxious about something, I try to imagine, well, what's the good that can come out of this? Yeah, there's bad that could come out of this, but what's the good that can come out of this? And I sound like I'm talking, and it's really easy to say these things. It's much harder to put them into practice. So, finding what makes you more comfortable in a situation isn't always easy. But it's an easier task than searching for happiness, because that's elusive.
Yeah.
So I try to tell myself, this isn't about me being happy. I may still be unhappy, but if I'm more comfortable, then I'm not going to that dark place.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'm more comfortable with my own existence and presence in this moment of time and how I'm dealing with it, then I may not be happy, but I'm not miserable.
Yeah.
And that's an okay place to be.
Yeah. Sometimes just coping is okay. Like, we don't have to go from, the worst you've ever felt to the best you've ever felt, because it's not going to happen. But, just having little things to hold on to get you through it is important. And knowing what they are and knowing who you can go to and what helps is a better phrase to say, is what helps. Yeah. Yeah,
and I want to share something on here, and I haven't been too shy about sharing this in the past, but it's not something that I advertise or anything like that. One of my, I don't know if it's a coping mechanism or if it's something else. I'm not quite sure what to call it. It's comfort, though. Mm-hmm. When I was born, my auntie gave me a blanket, and so as a newborn and growing up, I had what I called blankie when I had words for it. And blankie had a satin edge. And this satiny edge was fantastic to rub between your fingers. It just had a really silky, smooth, lovely feeling, very tactile. I'm quite a tactile person anyways. Mm-hmm. And I just loved the feeling, and it gave me, I grew up, literally grew up. It was there from day one. I was swaddled in it. And somewhere along the line, I found that this stuff was soft and felt good when I rubbed it like this, and it gave me comfort. And I lost track of blankie somewhere in my teenage years, and then it came out of a trunk somewhere, and I was like, oh yeah, blankie. And I was like, oh, and I was kind of rubbing it, and I was like, wow, that is lovely. That is nice. I remember that. So I went out to a fabric store and I bought me some fabric to put in all my coat pockets that I could just rub when I was walking down the street, or, whenever. I've got it in all my fleeces. I've got it in my jumpers. I've got blankies everywhere. And I just, it's partly why I love, cooler weather. I get to wear my fleeces with blankies in them, but it's not, I don't go there when I'm feeling anxious. It's just somewhere I go. It just makes me feel comfortable. I don't know what it is. It makes me feel happy.
Yeah.
So,
I love that,
it's
though.
that's an example of something that I think sometimes we grow up and we become ashamed of things that seem childlike or seem to be silly. But those are the very things that I think sometimes we need to hold on to with both arms and hug them close, because they're important for a reason.
Yeah. I think the same is to be said about video games. A lot of people feel shame in admitting that they like to play video games because of the stigma behind them, and it's actually a source of comfort for so many people.
It's not such a stigma anymore, though. I've been really pleased
We're
to see
getting
how
better. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just people who play video games. It's geeks and nerds and dorks of all shapes and sizes. You know, being a geek is no longer something that people are ashamed of. It's something that people celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and not just at conventions. People wear T-shirts, I trained with Yoda or something silly like that. I don't know. But, people celebrate their geekdom now publicly in a way that they didn't used to. And I think it's helping everybody to be more accepting. It's a funny thing, though. Geekdom it's an interesting term. We know what I think we're describing when we describe geeks and dorks and nerds and all these things. And some people pin them down to specific categories of pop culture fandom. But everybody's a geek. Everybody is a geek. That friend of yours who won't shut up about Man United is a geek for Man United. You know what I mean? It's like everybody's got something that they just geek out about. So the word geek really should be owned by everyone, not just used to just to displace or put down people who like Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone should unashamedly
geek out.
Thank you. Yes, what you said. Oh, exactly, because it's just differences. It's just people's differences, and some are apparently socially acceptable, and some used to be not. And so it's just, I think people are excited to be sharing that love of something with other people, especially on the internet, because there will be someone else who loves the same thing as you on the internet. And when you find each other, it's like so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, amazing. This is great. I'm loving this conversation so much.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad you are, Rosie.
Yeah,
I am too.
Yeah. Okay, good. I was going to say, please don't say that and then be like, I can't wait to get out of here. This is... So, you've always kind of been pretty passionate about mental health. And I'm guessing based on the answers that you've given me already, but I just wanted to ask why it's so important to you and why you wanted to support Safe in Our World as well.
Well, I think... why am I passionate about mental health? Because I like good mental health in myself. And I have, in my own life, dealt with when I was younger, I still do have it. I just control it much better. I had a terrible temper. Horrible. And if I was angry, I could carry a black cloud around with me that would affect everybody near me. It just horrible. And I have had friends who called me on it, and my wife certainly calls me on it. Basically, I'm passionate about mental health because I have mental health. I don't mean good or bad. I mean that just like everybody else in this world, I feel bad sometimes, or I get angry about things unnecessarily, or whatever it happens to be. So I think that what you call my passion for mental health, I wouldn't say I'm passionate about it because I don't read up on it. I don't go to a therapist or anything like that. I mean, maybe I should, I don't know. But I think that when I was presented with the idea of of Safe in Our World existing and me being part of it, I recognized because, I mean, there's so many reasons why, Rosie. When I was a teacher, when I was a full-time teacher, I came up against young people with all kinds of things that they were struggling with. And I went on my own understanding of mental health journey during those years of teaching, because there were things that I had heard about, or that I knew about from somewhere in the interweb, something that came up in some podcast or something somewhere. But I had never really dealt with real people with those issues, or had never knowingly done so. And I mean, a lot of these kinds of things were learning difficulties or learning differences. But along with those often came mental health, not problems, just mental health awareness issues. Mm-hmm. Some of them deep, some of them just, on the surface, but had to be dealt with in some way, or at least acknowledged. And students brought things to me that sometimes I was frankly overwhelmed by. And thank God we had a counselor at the university who I got on with really, really well, and she was amazing. And there were a number of times when I called her in, I just said, look, I really need someone who's an expert in this stuff to be there with me while I try and talk this student up or down or whatever it was that needed doing. And she taught me a lot just by the way that she talked with individuals, and the how she asked questions, and how she helped them find their own way out of whatever problem it was they were trying to find their way out of. So I think I've been on a journey, is the really honest answer. And I found myself, as I went on the journey and as I learned more and experienced more, I found myself becoming more aware and more having more of a desire to help make that difference. Because if I was being asked to make that difference for students because of the position I was in, and I was finding that I could do it, I could help, yeah, it's a journey, isn't it? Because I think through them, I learned better how to help myself.
Yeah.
So it's just like with teaching. I always say to people who have an opportunity to teach, but a lot of people put teaching down. They go, if you can't do it, teach. And that's completely backwards. Yeah. It's backwards on all kinds of ways. It's a terrible phrase. It's ridiculous. People choose to teach for all kinds of reasons. I always say, teach. If you get the chance to teach, even if it's just a workshop, do it. You will learn more about your own approach to what you're teaching than anything else will ever teach you. Having to explain to someone how you think this process happens for yourself and how they might approach the same process teaches you so much about yourself. And I think that's my mental health journey as well. The more I tried to help other people understand their own mental health, the more I appreciated aspects of my own. Yeah. And also it's become a topic that we're allowed to talk about. Yes. I mean, Rosie, it wasn't that long ago. When I first started teaching full time, it was 2004. And we didn't really talk about mental health. It wasn't really something that was on the table. I mean, it came up, obviously it had to, because people had meltdowns and people had, breakups, and people had, things that were affecting their mental health, but we just didn't talk about it like that. And one of the great things about Safe in Our World, and why I wanted to be involved in it, is it's like, here's this thing that we just don't talk enough about. And there's all kinds of issues within this. There's drug and alcohol dependency. There's, chronic issues, insomnia, extreme jealousy, OCD. All these kinds of things that affect or are affected by mental health. and we've only just really in the last 5 years as a society really started talking about them.
Yeah.
I mean, 25 years ago, PTSD was only just starting to become something that people took seriously. And that's a huge mental health thing. I don't want to use words like problem or issue, because that's not what it is. I mean, it can be problematic, but I think that's one of the things that we're starting to discover. We're starting to find ways to talk about this thing that are more constructive, more proactive, and that allow us to put it in the context that it deserves to be put in.
Yes.
Rather than being something that's swept under the rug or hidden in a closet, it's this stuff exists, and we do need to talk about it. And maybe some people don't want to talk about some of it, and that's fine. But as a society, we need to provide safe spaces where people can go, I'm having this problem, and I can't deal with it on my own. And they need to have somewhere to go to find information, to find advice, to find just a path forward. And so that's the whole idea of Safe in Our World, is to provide people with a path forward.
Yeah.
Safe in Our World wouldn't have existed 10 years ago.
No. And it comes back to what you said earlier as well about mental health. Everyone has mental health. It's not necessarily a good or bad. It's not like you have one or the other. Everyone has mental health, and it fluctuates, and it's something that does not have to be a really serious conversation in a dark room. Like it can be very open. It can be happy. We can have a good conversation about mental health and it not have that weird feeling behind it that I always used to get when I talked about it as a kid, because it was like, oh, we shouldn't talk about this, it feels wrong. And it's almost built within the language that we're using, like all of these words in everyday language, like crazy and mad, and all of these things have negative connotations towards mental health, rather than actually just talking about it as if it was anything else in like physical health, which is, like you say, exactly what Safe in Our World is trying to do and is doing. So yeah, we'll get there, and we are getting there, and the change is happening. It's just so sometimes it's slow.
Yeah, and it's a journey. It's a journey. And, 50 years from now, who knows where on that journey we as a society will be. I like to think that we will be living in a society that respects people for all their wonderful differences, for all their unique identities, for their needs, for the things that they need to make themselves comfortable. I don't think we can ever achieve perfection there. It's not really possible. We're flawed. Human beings are flawed fundamentally. So perfection isn't really a realistic goal. It's better to have things be better than they have been before. Mm-hmm. That's a good goal.
Yeah. Just moving forwards and upwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for answering my silly questions and being so candid about your journey and just sharing what you've shared. It's been lovely. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You're very welcome. It's been really nice to be here. I do feel a bit like I've just babbled about myself. I'm very good at that.
No, that's what we want. You're on a podcast. You're here to talk. It's interesting. I feel like I've just had a conversation with The Witcher. It's been amazing. And actually, yeah, that's one final thing. Would you be able to say something in The Witcher voice? Would that be okay?
Yeah, hang on. Just pull this a little closer, because Geralt's down in the lower registers. Stay on the path, people. Winds howling. See ya.